Do you ever take a spoonful of olive oil right before bed, telling yourself you're doing something good for your heart while you sleep? If you've seen that trend online or maybe even tried it yourself, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to share could completely change how you think about that bottle sitting in your kitchen. For years now, I've spent my time digging into how people over 50 can protect their heart, manage their weight, and stay sharp as they age, talking with families, reading the research, and comparing notes with the people around me. And in almost every single conversation, olive oil comes up. People love it. They trust it. But here's what worries me. It's not whether olive oil is good for you. It's how most people are actually using it, especially the habit so many are picking up right before bed. Olive oil has earned its golden reputation, and honestly, it deserves it when it's used the right way. But after 50, your body isn't the same as it was at 30. Your metabolism has shifted. Your digestion has slowed down. Your heart is working harder than it used to, quietly, every single day. So the small habits that felt harmless a decade ago, they start to matter a lot more now. A little extra pour here, a little extra heat there, a nighttime ritual that seems harmless. These things add up in a body that's already working overtime. Researchers have spent decades trying to understand why people along the Mediterranean coast, in places like Greece, Italy, and southern Spain, tend to live longer and stay sharper well into their 70s and 80s. One answer kept surfacing again and again: olive oil. It became the symbol of one of the most studied eating patterns in nutritional science, and large studies have linked it to a meaningfully lower risk of serious heart events when it's part of a balanced diet. That's a real powerful finding, not marketing. But somewhere along the way, olive oil went from being one healthy piece of the puzzle to being treated like a cure-all you could pour on anything and walk away protected. And that's exactly where the trouble begins. Because once we decide something is automatically good for us, we stop paying attention to how we're actually using it. I think about a man I know, Robert, a retired mechanic who prided himself on doing things right his whole life. He switched to olive oil the moment his doctor mentioned the Mediterranean diet, and he was genuinely proud of that choice. But when we sat down and went through his actual daily habits together, step by step, we found 3 separate places where his good intentions were quietly working against him without him ever realizing it. That's the thing about olive oil. It's not that people are doing something obviously wrong. It's that a handful of small, invisible habits add up over months and years, and nobody ever tells you to look for them. There are 5 specific mistakes I see seniors make with olive oil, mistakes that quietly cancel out the very benefits they think they're getting. And one of them, the one everyone's suddenly talking about online, happens right before bed in kitchens all over the country, probably including yours. Stick around, because that one surprised even the researchers who study this closely. Let's start with mistake number 1. And it begins before olive oil ever reaches your kitchen. A lot of what's sitting on store shelves right now isn't actually what the label claims. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a well-documented problem. Independent testing has repeatedly found that a large share of oils labeled extra virgin in the United States are diluted with cheaper oils or made from olives that were already old, damaged, or overprocessed before they were ever bottled. I know a woman, Carol, in her early 60s, who had been using the same bargain bottle from her local supermarket for almost 2 years. She was proud of how heart-healthy she'd been eating. When we looked at the bottle together, there was no harvest date, no seal, nothing but a picture of an olive branch on the label. She was likely getting almost none of the protection she believed she was getting, and she was heartbroken to hear it. Here's why this matters so much after 50. The real power behind olive oil comes from natural compounds called polyphenols, powerful antioxidants that fight inflammation. Degraded or fake oil contains far fewer of these compounds. So you could be drizzling something on your food every single day, feeling proud of your healthy choice, and getting only a fraction of the benefit you're counting on. Protecting yourself here takes less than 30 seconds at the store. Look for a dark glass bottle, never clear plastic, never clear glass, because light breaks down polyphenols fast. Look for an actual harvest date, not just an expiration date. Since the good compounds are strongest within 12 to 18 months of harvest, look for a certification seal like the California Olive Oil Council seal or a European PDO or PGI mark, and be honest with yourself about price. If a large bottle of extra virgin costs about the same as a bottle of water, something is almost certainly off. Can I ask you something honestly? Even if you buy the very best bottle in the store, are you sure you're not undoing all of that the moment you turn on the stove? Because that's mistake number 2. And it's happening in kitchens everywhere, probably including yours, more mornings than not. Picture this. You've got your good bottle, dark glass, harvest date, certified, the whole thing. You did everything right at the store. Now you're home, the pan's heating up, and you pour and maybe pour just a little more, just to be safe, just so nothing sticks. Sound familiar? Here's what most people don't realize. Olive oil is one of the healthiest fats you can eat, but it's still fat, and fat is the most calorie-dense thing on your entire plate. One single tablespoon runs about 120 calories. Most people cooking freely use 3, 4, sometimes 5 tablespoons without even noticing, which quietly adds 360 to 600 calories from oil alone before the actual food even hits the pan. Why does this matter more now than it did at 35? Because after 50, your metabolism naturally slows, your muscle mass tends to shrink, and the caloric cushion you had in your 30S and 40S, that margin where a little extra didn't really show up, gets a lot thinner. Research on aging has consistently shown that even modest extra calories in older adults are more likely to be stored as visceral fat. The deep belly fat that wraps around your organs and drives inflammation and cardiovascular risk. So many seniors are genuinely trying to eat well. They've switched to olive oil. They feel proud of that choice. And they're quietly adding hundreds of extra calories a day, wondering why the scale won't budge or why their energy feels a little off. The fix here is refreshingly simple. 1 to 2 tablespoons per meal. Grab an actual measuring spoon for a week or two, just long enough to recalibrate your eye. Almost everyone I've walked through this exercise is genuinely shocked at how much they were actually pouring without realizing it. Now, here's the mistake that really surprises people. Mistake number 3, and it happens fast, sometimes within minutes, right there on your stovetop. You buy good oil, you use a reasonable amount, and then you crank the burner up to high and fry everything in sight. Here's what's actually happening inside that pan. Every oil has what's called a smoke point, the temperature at which it starts to break down and release harmful compounds. For extra virgin olive oil, that's roughly 375 to 405 degrees Fahrenheit. And a standard skillet on high heat can blow right past that within just a few minutes. When it does, 2 things happen that should concern you. First, the polyphenols, the very compounds protecting your heart and your brain, start breaking down rapidly, leaving you with an oil that contains far fewer of the benefits you're paying for. Second, overheated oil begins producing compounds called aldehydes and free radicals, and research published in food science journals has linked repeatedly overheated cooking oils to oxidation byproducts that, over time, may contribute to cellular stress and inflammation. That doesn't mean you can't cook with olive oil at all. Low to medium heat is your zone for sautéing vegetables, warming garlic, building a simple sauce. And honestly, one of the smartest moves you can make is adding olive oil after the cooking is done, drizzled over roasted vegetables, stirred into soup right before serving, or finished over a piece of grilled fish. The heat never touches it, and you keep the full benefit sitting right there on your plate. Can I ask you one more quick question before we move on? When you look at what's actually sitting on your plate next to that healthy drizzle of olive oil, are you being as honest with yourself there as you are about the oil itself? Here's what shocked me about a retired school teacher I know named Frank. He'd read online that olive oil could help cancel out an unhealthy meal. So he started drizzling it generously over fast food, packaged snacks, whatever he was eating that day, thinking he was covering his bases. That's mistake number 4, and it's one of the quietest ways people accidentally undo their own good intentions. Olive oil doesn't work like a switch. You flip to neutralize damage from everything else on your plate. It works within a broader pattern of eating, and when that pattern is loaded with ultra-processed food, the oil simply can't do the job you're expecting of it. Research from major nutrition institutions has been fairly clear on this point. The protective effects tied to olive oil show up most consistently in people eating a whole food, plant-forward pattern, not as an add-on to an otherwise poor diet. Ultra-processed foods, chips, fast food, pre-made tend to spike blood sugar and disrupt gut health. And after 50, your gut is already working harder just to keep things balanced. Pouring good olive oil on top of that doesn't erase it. Pair good oil with good food instead. Vegetables, legumes, whole grains, fresh herbs, fish. And that's when it actually delivers on everything it promises. And now, the mistake that started this whole conversation, the one happening right before bed in homes across the country, if you've spent any time on social media lately, you've probably seen it. People filming themselves taking big, dramatic spoonfuls of olive oil at night, no food, nothing else, straight down the throat, claiming it detoxifies the body, calms inflammation, and works its magic while you sleep. I understand the appeal completely. It sounds simple. It sounds natural. If a little olive oil is good, more must be even better, right? Here's the truth. Your digestive system especially after 50, was never built to process a large amount of pure fat on an empty stomach right before you lie down for 6 or 7 hours. When you flood your gut with several tablespoons at once, your gallbladder has to release a sudden surge of bile to break it all down, and a surprising number of older adults have gallbladder sensitivity without even knowing it yet. That surge can trigger cramping, nausea, and real discomfort, sometimes waking people up in the middle of the night wondering what's wrong. I know a woman, Linda, who started this exact habit after seeing it online, 2 tablespoons every night before bed, hoping it would help her cholesterol. Within 2 weeks, she was telling me about stomach cramps and disrupted sleep, convinced something serious was wrong. It wasn't a mystery illness. It was her gallbladder reacting to a fat overload it simply wasn't prepared for right before her body was supposed to be winding down for rest. There's no credible evidence that taking large amounts of olive oil on an empty stomach, especially right before bed, produces any additional benefit over simply using it normally with your meals throughout the day. None. What it reliably produces is extra calories, digestive upset, and disrupted sleep, which is about the last thing anyone over 50 needs more of. Before we get to exactly how to use it correctly, let's talk for a moment about what a good bottle of olive oil is actually doing inside your body when everything goes right, because I don't want you walking away thinking olive oil is something to fear. It's not. The compound doing most of the heavy lifting is called oleocanthal, and researchers have found it behaves in a remarkably similar way to a mild anti-inflammatory, working on some of the same pathways involved in everyday joint pain and swelling. Every time you use good, unheated olive oil, you're giving your body a gentle nudge against inflammation at the cellular level, and inflammation sits underneath almost every major condition that becomes more common after 50, heart disease, joint stiffness, and slower thinking on hard days. Beyond that, olive oil supports your cardiovascular system by helping to raise the protective form of cholesterol while reducing the oxidized form most associated with buildup in your arteries. The primary fat in olive oil has been tied to healthier blood pressure and more flexible arteries, which matters more with every passing year. Since your blood vessels naturally lose some flexibility as you age, early research has also pointed to a connection between quality olive oil and better memory support over time, which is exactly the kind of thing worth protecting while you still can. None of this happens by accident, and none of it happens with fake oil, an overheated pan, or a spoonful before bed. It happens with a small amount of the real thing, used consistently, day after day, meal after meal. That's the whole secret. And it's remarkably ordinary once you see it clearly. There's a reason the longest-lived populations researchers have studied for decades keep using olive oil as their primary source of fat, not because it's trendy, but because it simply works, year after year, meal after meal, as part of a way of eating that respects what an aging body actually needs. So let's bring all of this together and talk about exactly how to use olive oil correctly in a way that actually protects your heart instead of quietly working against it. Start with buying the right bottle. Extra virgin, dark glass, a visible harvest date, and a certification seal if you can find one. Spend a little more here if you need to. It's genuinely worth it. Store it properly, away from heat and light, tucked in a cool, dark cabinet, never sitting next to a warm stove or on a sunny counter. Use the right amount, 1 to 2 tablespoons per meal, measured out until your eye naturally adjusts to what that actually looks like. Respect the heat, keeping the stovetop to low or medium, and saving your best, boldest drizzles for after the food comes off the burner, over salads, steamed vegetables, warm soup, or a slice of whole grain bread with a little sea salt. And pair it with real food, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and fish. So it's working as part of a genuine pattern instead of trying to patch over a poor one. Let's talk for a moment about pairing, because this is where a lot of well-meaning people quietly fall short. The best combinations aren't complicated. A drizzle over roasted vegetables with a squeeze of lemon, a spoonful stirred into lentil soup right before you serve it, a finish over grilled salmon or sardines alongside a simple green salad, whole grain bread dipped lightly with a little sea salt and cracked pepper instead of butter. These combinations aren't fancy restaurant tricks. They're exactly the kind of everyday pairing that lets olive oil do what it's designed to do, working alongside fiber, lean protein, and other plant compounds instead of sitting on top of a plate of fried food or packaged snacks. Let's also do a quick recap of the mistakes, because I want this to actually stick with you. Mistake 1, buying oil that isn't really extra virgin or is already degraded before it ever reaches your table. Mistake 2, overpouring during cooking and quietly adding hundreds of extra calories a day without noticing. Mistake 3, cranking the heat too high and destroying the very compounds you're trying to benefit from. Mistake 4, pairing good oil with poor food and expecting it to cancel out the damage. And mistake 5, the one that brought us here tonight, taking large amounts on an empty stomach right before bed, hoping for some kind of overnight miracle that the research simply doesn't support. Choosing the best version of the store, one more time, in simple terms, dark glass over clear, a harvest date over a vague expiration date, a real certification seal when you can find one, and a price that reflects genuine quality rather than the cheapest option on the shelf. It takes maybe an extra minute of your time at the store, and it makes a real difference in what actually ends up in your body. As for who should be more careful, a few groups deserve extra attention and a conversation with their doctor before making big changes. Anyone with gallbladder issues or a history of gallstones, since concentrated fat triggers a strong bile response that can be uncomfortable. Anyone with a sensitive gut, conditions like IBS or Crohn's, or high-fat foods can sometimes aggravate symptoms. Anyone taking blood thinners like warfarin, since olive oil's natural effects on blood vessels are worth mentioning to a physician if intake increases significantly. And anyone following a strict, medically supervised calorie-controlled plan, since olive oil is calorie-dense and needs to be accounted for, even though it's a genuinely healthy source of those calories. None of this means avoiding olive oil altogether. For the vast majority of older adults, it remains one of the safest, most genuinely beneficial foods on the table. When it's treated with the respect it deserves, instead of a quick fix you can pour on and forget about. Now let's talk specifically about timing and amount, because this is the part I want you to actually remember tomorrow morning. 1 to 2 tablespoons per meal is the range the research consistently supports, spread across breakfast, lunch, and dinner rather than saved up and taken all at once. If you're cooking, keep it to the lower end of that range, since heat changes how your body handles it. If you're using it raw, drizzled over a finished dish, you can comfortably sit toward the higher end since you're getting the full, undamaged benefit of every drop. Morning and midday use tends to sit better with most people's digestion than a large amount taken late at night, simply because your body is more active and better equipped to process fat earlier in the day. And if you've been in the habit of a nightly spoonful, there's a much gentler way to get a similar sense of ritual, a small drizzle over your dinner plate instead, which lets you enjoy the same oil, the same intention, without asking your gallbladder to work overtime right before you try to sleep. Olive oil isn't a myth, and it isn't overhyped. The science behind it is real, and it's remarkably consistent. But like any powerful tool, it only works when you use it the right way, and that includes what you're doing with it right before you turn off the lights tonight. So do this one small thing for me. Go check your bottle, look at the harvest date, check the glass, and skip the spoonful before bed tonight, choosing instead to use it thoughtfully with your meals tomorrow. Small awareness, real change, starting with the very next time you reach for that bottle. It doesn't take a dramatic overhaul of your kitchen or your habits, just a little more attention paid to a food you already trust, and a little more honesty about how you're actually using it one meal at a time. You're not just eating food, and you're not just pouring oil over a plate. After 50, every single meal is a signal you're sending to your heart, your brain, and your joints. A signal that either supports them or quietly works against them. Olive oil, used the right way, at the right time of day, is one of the clearest, most well-supported signals you can send your own body. You don't need a dramatic new routine or an expensive supplement to get it right. You just need the real thing in the right amount at the right time, day after day. If this gave you something you'll actually remember, something practical you can use starting tonight, please hit like and subscribe for more honest, science-backed conversations about aging well. Here on Purely Health, we cut through the noise and give your body the honest information it deserves. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.